Welcome to Day 21 on the Trail. We have 4 readings for today, from Luke chapter 10 verse 25 through 11:13, Genesis 35 verse 16 through 36:43, the 32nd and 33rd Psalms, and Sirach chapter 26 verse 28 through 28:26. We begin today in Genesis 35. Here we have the first complete listing of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, this list will change throughout the course of the scriptures. For example, we have a different list in Numbers 1 and Revelation 7. We will cover those lists and their differences from Genesis 35 in future podcasts. But for today, we're going to focus on verse 22, which says, "While Israel lived in the land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it." Now, nothing more is mentioned here in chapter 35. The author makes this statement and moves on. However, this moment will have a major impact on how the 12 sons of Jacob receive the blessing of Jacob. Traditionally, the firstborn would inherit a double blessing. However, this double portion of the blessing is not given to Reuben because of his betrayal of his father. Instead, the double blessing will be given to Joseph's 2 sons. We find in 1 Chronicles chapter 5 verse 1, "The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. He was the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, son of Israel, so that he is not enrolled in the genealogy according to the birthright." We will also see that later, Joseph's name does not appear in the listing of the 12 tribes. Instead, Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are listed. Therefore, by installing Joseph's 2 sons in the listing of the 12 tribes, Joseph, through his 2 sons, actually receives the double blessing. In Sirach chapter 28, we have a wonderful statement about the importance of who we listen to. Today, we are often tempted to listen to the cacophony of voices all around us. We let what people say about us, or even to us, affect us deeply. But here, in Sirach chapter 28, verses 16 and 18, we find, "Those who pay heed to slander will not find rest, nor will they settle down in peace. The blow of a whip raises a welt, but a blow of the tongue crushes the bones. Many have fallen by the edge of the sword, but not as many as have fallen because of the tongue." Not only are we to not slander others, but we should also be very careful of the voices we listen to and how deeply we allow their words to sink into our souls. Also, in chapter 28, verse 2, it says, "Forgive your neighbor the wrong he has done, and then your sins will be pardoned when you pray." Notice how closely this verse resembles the Lord's Prayer as recorded in Matthew and Luke's Gospels. Speaking of the Lord's Prayer, note that in Luke's version that we read today contains only 5 petitions versus the 7 petitions contained in Matthew's version. We will cover this difference in more detail when we get to Matthew's Gospel. Until then, if you're interested in learning more about the Lord's Prayer, I'm including a link to a full discussion of this prayer in the description for this podcast. Finally today, in Luke 10, we find the familiar story of the Good Samaritan. Along the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, 3 people see a man beside the road who has fallen among thieves. The first 2 who passed by, a priest and a Levite, are leaders of the Jewish people and should have known to stop and help the man. Now, we do not know why they did not stop, and many have made suggestions to justify their actions. However, Jesus' view is clear. They should have helped. Then a third person passes by, a Samaritan, and he is the one who shows actual compassion and stops to aid the man. In this period, Samaritans were considered outcasts. They were viewed as half-breeds, descendants of the Assyrians, who conquered the northern kingdom of Israel in the 8th century BC, and the Israelites who were living in that region. When the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom, they intermarried with the people living there, and so their descendants were part Assyrian and part Israelite. Therefore, many Jews in that period would journey around Samaria when traveling from Galilee to Judea, rather than set foot in Samaria or encounter a Samaritan. And yet Jesus tells the crowd that it is this one, this Samaritan, who does what is right. The Samaritan is the one who is a neighbor to the Jewish man who has fallen among thieves. Notice that in verse 37, the person asking the original question of Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" can't even say the word Samaritan. Instead, he says, "the one who helped him." So, who is our neighbor? Well, I think we start with the person standing in front of us. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.